Hey everyone, James Hagglund here in another episode of Who Are They? And we're here with Cody. How you doing?
Doing good, James. How about yourself?
Oh, doing pretty good. So what city are you out of?
Currently live in Stanwood, Washington, but I'm originally from Everett. I've lived in the area for since I was 5 years old.
How do you like Stanwood?
Stanwood, I didn't really know much about the town before I moved here. My fiance is actually her family lives in Stanwood, and I would visit every now and then. And the more that I came up here, the more I fell in love with this city. You get like a really small town feel from it, but the community here is probably like some of the best communities I've ever run into in the past. It's like everyone in this town is kind of like a family. And you got all of the small shops in town as well. A lot of small businesses are thriving here because of its community, and that's one of the things that I really valued about this city.
So what's your go-to place to eat in Stanwood?
So there's this small taco place uh, on what is that, Stanwood Camino Highway. I think it's Maria's Cocina or something. They changed their name recently, but it's a really good taco place down in Stanwood. And actually, it's basically my go-to, even for like when I'm in other cities. This is like the best Mexican food that I can get in my area, like even through all
Hmm.
the way down to Everett.
So you're down south, you're like, I'm going there. I'll wait to eat before I
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
pretty
Any other
much. Yeah,
rest
the one thing I would recommend. So like at that Mexican restaurant, the one thing I would recommend is their adobada, which is like their marinated pork. It's like the best adobada you can
Nice. Any other places in the area?
find. There's the Spartan Drive-in, which is cool. It's a nice little like burger shack. It's pretty well known here in the community. It's been around for a while. When it comes to small businesses, there's actually another place. It's called Mammoth Burger. I think it's a franchise, but they recently opened up in the like really in the heart of downtown, where all like the little shopping centers are.
So what do you like to do in the area or just for fun?
One of the things that was really convenient about living in Stanwood is I've got the Skagit River right here. The slough is like 5 minutes that way, and then the Stillaguamish River, which is actually my favorite river, and I like to fish these rivers a lot.
Mhm.
Like it, my fishing season pretty much starts like towards the end of September, and I'll run through all the way through the winter. I fish for coho usually at the end of September, or even earlier than that. It'll be humpies if it's humpy season, which luckily this year it's humpy season.
Mhm.
And then towards the end of the coho run, that's when you start to get all the winter run steelhead. You can't keep any of them, but that's okay. Most of the steelhead around here are like their numbers have been dwindling over the years, but it's still fun to really go out and fish for them and see that they're actually surviving and thriving, and making a comeback.
For work, what do you do for work?
So right now I'm a real estate agent in Stanwood.
Okay. Okay.
This is pretty much the area that I like to work, but my services go from Bellingham all the way down to Linwood.
With what company?
EXP Realty is my brokerage.
Okay. What made you get into real estate?
So what I used to do before is I got into like residential construction. So my dad, he worked at a cabinet shop, a manufacturing shop, and he got me a job as like a driver. So I'd go to like all these job sites and work with installers, and like they were remodeling like kitchens and bathrooms and stuff. That's what really got me into the whole like remodeling. After which the company was called Kitchen Plus at the time. After that, I decided to go and work with contractors and doing interior remodel myself. I probably did that for about 2 or 3 years, working under other people. I ended up becoming a subcontractor and bidding out a lot of the work myself. I probably did that for about 4 years. And through all of this knowledge that I've learned over that time, I realized like how important it is to quality of life and for like equity gain to actually put money back into your home. And I really liked a lot of the designs that these finishers were doing as well. So it's amazing what you can do with a home when you renovate it. And then after that, I actually went and got my CDL. So I was driving concrete mixer trucks. So I was delivering concrete for foundations, for slab work. But most of the things that I was doing was residential new build foundations for brand new homes. So I basically learned everything except for roofing. Like I'm not an electrician or anything, but I work my way around it. I work like with plumbers and electricians all the time. So from the ground up, from the dirt up, I've learned a lot about building homes. And the only thing that I hadn't learned yet was really just the real estate side of things, which always intrigued me, especially with like developments, private owners that are doing new builds. Like there were people that would buy a plot of land and then they would get the permitting to put a house on it. And I was like, well, how are they able to do this? Well, it turns out they just take out home equity loans of their existing property and then they just put it into a new build. They build a whole new house.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's this process here and it's intriguing, right? And you're gonna learn a
Yeah,
lot
because I
more about it when you become a real estate agent too.
right, exactly. And I knew a lot about as a contractor, I knew a lot about like the permits and everything, like the building department and there's certain things you have to do, like building code, of course, and you have to like draw that out and plan it on paper, and then you have to submit it to the building department, and then they have to approve it. So I learned a lot about that as well. Networking with general contractors, subcontractors for a lot of that has been like a huge benefit for me in this, like having a good understanding of the whole process of building homes.
So, do you read books or listen to podcasts or anything like that?
I don't really listen. The only podcasts I really listen to are like informational stuff about real estate in the market.
Hmm.
That and like nerdy stuff, like fantasy books. And I actually listened to like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign on a podcast just because I think it's really unique that people can take the story that like the person putting in front of them and they can shape it, and then that person, the dungeon master, can actually adapt to what their players are doing, and the story just keeps changing and changing and changing. It's almost
Hmm.
like making a story but on the go. You can't just go and write it all beforehand. You kind of have to make it as you go because your players
Right.
will influence it and change it. But like I find that really fun and interesting.
So, who influenced you growing up or now?
So my dad, obviously, because he was in residential remodel, and like that's where I really got to get an insight as a kid, because he would like renovate our own homes. He'd bring like cabinets home and put them in our kitchen. Like I wouldn't say I was always constantly living in a job site, but a lot of the time that's just what my dad did. He renovated it in his off time, and that's where I learned a lot from him about the benefits of renovating a home, because I lived in it and I'd help him every now and then as well. My grandfather was also a really big influence for me. He was a nuclear. He worked on nuclear subs. So he was in the Navy and he was on a submarine all the time. And these were nuclear subs that he was on. And over the years, he's taught me a lot about hard work and persevering and coming over challenges. Uh, he's um, he's not an engineer, but he's basically an engineer. The things that I've seen this man do in person, we actually built a cabin together
Hmm.
up in the woods in Oregon, and just the amount of knowledge that he had, just general knowledge, was just amazing. He was just a I could he could pretty much answer any question I had about basically anything that was science related. He was probably like one of the smartest men I've ever met,
Hmm.
ever known in my life. So my grandfather has been a huge influence for me throughout my life.
Yeah, the problem-solving engineer mentality, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, so he built a sawmill, a little one, but from scratch. He did it with like an old
Wow.
lawnmower motor, and he like got the blades. He did the pulleys and everything, and the leveling system and the racks. And then we went up and he built the cabin out of the trees that he cut down on the property.
So, what would you like to leave the people that are watching this, like as far as real estate goes, and how you can help them?
I think the biggest thing is knowledge, um, knowing certain things about how uh, you can use the market to your advantage. The more you know, the more you can really determine if it's a good time to buy or to sell.
Hmm.
The biggest thing is like for buyers, for example, different kinds of loans, interest rates, like what people are offering in the market, like sellers to buyers, especially in today's market. Same with sellers. If you can determine how much equity you've gotten in the last 4 or 5 years, even though you've lost a little bit in the last year, you're still in the positive equity game, so you can still justify selling. But the biggest thing is like you got to know if it's a buyer's market. That's the biggest thing. It's like it's equity, and if it's a buyer's market, if you can determine whether or not buyers going to come to your home. But knowledge is power in
Mhm.
any market. The more you know, the more you can actually determine yourself. Instead of having somebody telling you, the more you can determine yourself if you actually want to buy or sell or even invest.
Well, thanks, Cody. I appreciate your time, and we're gonna have your contact information in the description below. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you, James.